What bike do you get if you can only have one? Something that's nimble around town while still being able to punch its way through a rock garden. A practical bike where the cost won't break the bank, but the components won't break under pressure. Something that's got everything you need out of the box, but can be customized to fit your needs. GT thinks they have the answer with the new 2020 Avalanche. But with a foot in both trail and urban riding, does it stand tall or fall flat? Hey everyone, my name is Joseph and welcome back. So, I've had this GT Avalanche for a few months now, but the way that I got it was a bit of an interesting story. See, after I made my video on the GT sensor, I had a ton of people reach out to me asking for a recommendation on what GT hardtail to get. They were looking to move out of an entry-level bike, but a full suspension just wasn't in the cards yet. Now, I grew up riding GT hardtail, so of course, I didn't recommend anything from GT. Last year, GT's hardtail lineup just wasn't a good value compared to other things out on the market. And after answering so many emails that way, I decided to reach out to GT myself and kind of vent my frustrations. I was really surprised when they wrote back, but was happy to hear that they were actually working on it. And they said that they would get back in touch later after the bike launched, so that way they could send me some information and maybe I could share it with my viewers. Though I was a little bit confused when they asked me for my address after the bike launched. Alright, maybe they want to send me like a hat or something? That's a big hat. Yeah, I know, right? They sent me a whole bike, which I definitely appreciate GT doing. However, I do want to say, GT did send this bike to me for free for the purpose of making a video. However, I am not under contract to say nice things. I wasn't force-fed a binder full of marketing material, and I am certainly not getting paid for my opinion. These are all my own independent thoughts after riding this bike for a few months. Normally, this is the part of the video where we start diving into all the technical details of the bike, what comes on it, and the geometry. But I actually need to catch a train. Chances are, if you live in Denver, you've ridden the RTD light rail at least once. It's mostly on time, goes to some of the places you need to be, and offers just enough space for cyclists to awkwardly shuffle around each other. I'm on the train with this bike because GT says it was designed for someone that could only have one bike, something to get them around town during the weekday and hit the trails on the weekend. That's why you'll find mount points for a rear rack on this bike, extra storage when you need it, and you can take the rack off if you plan on going full send during the weekend. Another feature that commuters might appreciate for those rougher roads is actually a design borrowed from the new GT Grade adventure bike. The seat stays are welded in front of the seat tube instead of directly on it. This allows the seat stays to flex just enough to help take the chatter out of the ride. For those worrying about this making the bike flimsy, GT does claim that it can support up to 330 pounds. Honestly, I was a bit skeptical on if this actually worked, but I gotta say, it actually does feel more comfortable over rough sections of roads, and this is comparing it to my normal commuter bike, which is a steel Salsavia with plus-size tires. Alright, so I made it to the office just fine, but let's be realistic, most bikes shouldn't have a hard time getting me to work. But that does bring up the question, if this truly was designed with a little bit of commuter bike in mind, does that mean they made too many compromises and it's just gonna fall apart out on the trail? Floyd Hill has always been popular with the Denver locals, but today, everyone's on their way up to ride the new trail called the Sluice. Sluice?
It's the Sluice.
Sluice!
Better known as Segment 4.
This is a 1 mile long, dedicated downhill segment so the locals can come and have fun without dealing with the lines at the park. Black diamond trail rating with double diamond option lines. This is a great place for us to see just how much abuse the Avalanche can take. Now, I'm going to ride this trail with the bike mostly stock. The only thing I've swapped out are pedals. I needed something with pins in it so I could actually control the bike. Of course, before we go down, we have to go up. The bike comes with a 1x10 drivetrain, which I was worried wasn't going to be enough range, but actually I found it to be plenty, and I was also hauling a bunch of extra camera gear with me, so I was definitely loaded down that day. The trails here in Colorado can get really dry and loose. Now, when it's just a little bit dusty, the WTB Ranger tires that come on this bike are perfectly fine. But if you hit a really loose section, you're going to find yourself quickly running out of grip and stalling out. Once again, the design that allows the rear of the bike to flex does actually work. I was really impressed. It's nothing like having full suspension bike, to be clear, but it does help when you're seated on the bike and going over some chunky sections. It just kind of helps smooth out the trail. Alright, so we made it to the top, and that's enough talking about how the bike climbs. Let's see how it goes down. Nice! Woo! Wow. These rock features are so cool on this trail. Okay, so this is really inspiring for this bike because, yeah, I'm definitely taxing it, but it is taking it in stride. That front fork is definitely starting to feel it, but I've only felt it bottom out a couple times. Nothing that really makes me worried. Whoa, almost washed out there though. The tires are definitely struggling for grip. And the fork isn't the quietest thing. But I mean, come on. I'm riding a single black diamond that is very well crafted, I might add, on an $825 bike, $825 bike, and the only thing I've done to it is put better pedals on there. Easy, so easy. These tires are just not meant for this. Oh, the brakes want to grab, but the tires don't. I cannot say enough. These tires are holding this bike back. Oh, that is loose. Oh, yeah. Oh, I love rock gardens. Oh, yes. This is so good. The people who built this trail, you are evil geniuses, and I love you. Oh, I didn't have enough speed. Oh, oh, oh my God, I barely had that. All right, not too bad considering that was my very first time on that trail with a bike that I wasn't too familiar with. Speaking of the trail, I think this is going to be my new test site for everything going forward. What do you think? It's a pretty awesome loop. As far as my thoughts on the bike, why don't we cover a few things so that way I can tell you what I like and what I don't like. Overall, I really like the drivetrain on this bike. It shifts well, and also it comes with a clutch. And if you don't know what a clutch is, basically that helps keep the chain under tension even when you're going down really chunky sections. This can prevent the chain from bouncing around and causing a lot of noise, but more importantly, it can also keep it from bouncing off the chain ring and causing what's called a dropped chain. To slow the bike down, you have Shimano MT200 hydraulic brakes. These provided pretty good modulation and braking power for the cost. Paired with 160mm rotors front and rear, if you do decide you want more braking power, you could always upgrade the front rotor to 180mm. Moving on to the wheels, unfortunately we do not get tubeless compatibility with these. And as another side note, depending on what size you get, you might get 27.5 or 29. I believe it's extra small and small get 27.5, where medium to large get 29. In case you missed it the first time I mentioned it, I'm not a fan of the tires on this bike. The WTB Rangers are great for light-duty trail and also commuting, but any type of serious trail riding, you're going to want to swap them out with something more aggressive. I had decided to try that myself. I put some Maxxis High Roller 2 tires on and took it up for another ride, and it was a massive improvement. Much smoother rollover chunky sections, better braking, better turning, and overall just much more confidence inspiring. In fact, I was able to finally clean this very loose technical section that had me walk every time I came up to it.
I can do this. Use that as your line. The crease is your friend, not your enemy. Crease is your friend, not your enemy. Yes!
On the topic of technical terrain, that 100mm coil fork did perform pretty darn good for the money. It was supportive when I needed it, but also smoothed out the trail. That said, it would have really been great to have the 120mm air fork option that you can get on this bike outside of the US. I spoke with GT's product manager and he said that they are trying to get this to the US but don't have any details yet. Now let's talk about the frame and how it feels. But before that, I do want to say, I would not call myself an expert, I just really like hardtails. I try to ride every type of hardtail I can get my hands on. Anything from a $400 entry-level hardtail, steel hardtails, all the way up to a $5,000 dream bike. That's to say, I don't know much, but I do know what I like. With that, I would say the characteristics of this frame are geared a little bit more towards comfort. It is a little bit flexible, but not in a flimsy way. It just helps smooth out the trail. Obviously though, this really is not what I would refer to as a hardcore hardtail, so if you're looking to do exclusively hardcore trail riding, this probably isn't the bike for you. Though you probably were already clued into that looking at that longer stem. Yes, this is more of an XC style bike like most bikes in this price range. With the 68.5 degree head angle, it's pretty much in the middle of the pack. Not very aggressive, but not too steep. Speaking of head tube, it's nice to see that they have a tapered head tube on this bike, which means that you have a much wider selection of fork options if you decide to upgrade or need to replace your fork after a few years of use. It was great to see the addition of an internal dropper post routing option for this bike. In fact, most of the cables are routed through the down tube on this bike, giving it a nice clean look. There's one last feature on this bike that's very interesting, and that is the rear hub, which is a 141 boost. Don't worry if you had to Google that, I did too. Basically what it is a standard boost hub, but it uses a thinner quick release axle instead of a standard through axle. Now, I asked GT why didn't they just go with a standard boost hub, and they said basically cost. If they went with that, it would have added an additional $100 to $150 on the price of the bike by the time it made it to the store. The good news is there's a decent amount of hubs on the market that can be converted to Boost 141 with just a simple kit. For example, for $20, I was able to convert my Hope hub over to 141 and have it fit on this bike just fine. That means you can upgrade the wheel set on this bike without worrying about them being completely useless if you move on to a different bike. However, I stress this, make sure you do your homework because there's a lot of hubs that aren't compatible with 141. So, know before you buy if they're going to work. Alright, so at the end of the day, what do I actually think about this bike? Well, my girlfriend kind of posed that same question to me in a very interesting way. She said, a bike is just a bunch of triangles stuck together with wheels under it. So what makes these triangles so special? And I gotta say, there's a lot of stuff here that you can find on other bikes on the market, but in all honesty, the one thing that really stood out to me was the rear chainstay design. This worked so well that there were times I actually stopped to check my rear tire pressure because I thought maybe I got a pinch flat. No, it was just doing such a good job smoothing out the trail that I thought there was something wrong. Now, I will be totally honest that there are people that love a very stiff bike and probably don't like the idea of this design. And that's fine because you're probably riding more aggressive trails than this was designed for anyways. But there's a lot of things going for this bike, and I'm really happy that GT gave me a chance to try it out. So yes, I definitely think it should be on your short list, but of course, I'm a big fan of try before you buy and take home the bike that feels right to you. If that's the GT, awesome. I do have one last comment to make though. This is great, but there's a big gap between this Avalanche and the GT sensor. And it would be really awesome if they brought out a truly aggressive, hardcore hardtail to fill in that gap next year. Because as a kid that grew up riding GT bikes, that would have me doing backflips to the bike store to pick that up. But until that time, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and maybe subscribe if you're new to the channel, because welcome and thank you for checking out my videos. Leave a comment below of what you thought about this bike, and maybe share this video with a friend if you found it entertaining or helpful. But until the next time, everyone, whatever bike you have, wherever you live, go grab your bike, go outside, and find your next adventure. Have a good one.